Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I hope you guys are all well. So in this video, we are going to talk about how to use effect hook in React. So let's go. So what is use effect hook and why it is important to learn? So use effect hook is actually a core fundamental when you are doing coding with React. It is very important to learn and understand how powerful it is. So let's head over to it and understand what use effect really is. So use effect hook essentially is to allow side effects within functional component. Side effects like updating the DOM, fetching data from API endpoints or database, etc. etc. You may wonder, this sounds pretty good, but I have no idea what use effect really is. So for that, you have to understand why use effect is introduced in React. Because you cannot perform side effects in functional component without use effect, because previously side effects only supported by class based component using three main life cycles like component did mount, component did update and component will unmount. And then after React hooks came in picture and use effects are now all handle, means use effect handle all this life cycle method in functional component. Understand? Life cycles method like component did mount, component did update, component will unmount are all handled by use effect hook in functional component, as previously side effects is only supported by class based component using life cycles method. So first of all, we have to understand that the three main life cycles method theoretically, not practically, theoretically, and then we have to use effect instead of this life cycles method to achieve the same goal that these life cycles do. So first of all, we have to understand it. So let's head over to it. So first of all, we have to understand the component did mount. So component did mount lifecycle method runs when component load. Suppose you have to execute a piece of code when web page load, then you have to use component did mount. And then suppose you have to execute a piece of code when web page updates. Suppose you have interact with web page and needs update, then you have to use component did update lifecycles method. This method runs immediately after updating occurs. And component will unmount, which is very tricky to understand, but it's very important to learn. So this method runs immediately before component is unmounted. It runs a piece of code inside it when the component unmount or destroy. Understand? So this is the three main life cycle. Now we are going to achieve the same goal that this life cycle method gives us using use effect hook. So there are four use cases to achieve the same thing that these life cycles do. So let's head over to it. So the first use of use effect hook is this. So this is the basic syntax of the use effect function or hook. So use effect and then the function inside it where the piece of code that you want to run exists, and then the dependencies here. So first use is that the use effect hook without dependency array means it runs on every render. This is the syntax. It means it runs the piece of code inside it every time the component re-render. So understand this first use using the example. So go to our code and this is the use effect. So first of all, you have to import use effect from React library and then the parentheses, and inside then the arrow functions, And here if you want dependencies, then just type brackets and inside it type the dependencies that you want. Suppose you want the name dependencies, then type name. If you want something like loading, then just type loading and save it. So this is the dependencies. But on our first use, we does not want any dependencies. Just type simple as this. Now inside it just type console.log and type page re-render, and every time the component change this piece of code execute. Here there is an input which has a value name, and it's change whenever something type inside it and set to this state variable called name using set name function. This is the setter. Okay, so just every time the components change, it re-render it. So go to the website and see. This is the actual page. Go to inspect. Okay, wait a second. Inspect. Okay, inspect console, and just you can see the page re-render. So every time we refresh, it first occur as initially as a page re-render, and whenever the components change, you can see the page re-render it again and again whenever the components change. So this is the first use of useEffect hook. Okay, now we are going to talk about the second use of useEffect hook. So useEffect hook with an empty dependency array means it runs when a component load which is similar to component did mount. If you want to achieve a same goal as component did mount do, then you have to use useEffect without any dependencies. Okay, so just go to the code base, and now you have to run this. So on first render, so it rendered the piece of code inside this useEffect on initially. Okay, so just uncomment it and type it here. So just type console.log I rendered initially and save it. Now just go to the page and refresh it. So you can see I render initially, and if I change the component here, you can see the I render initially is not appearing again and again because it render only at the initial mount when the component mounts. So this is the second use of useEffect, which is similar to the component did mount in class base component. So this is the second use. Now we are going to talk about the third use. So for third use, just see. So the third use of useEffect hook is a useEffect hook with a dependency, means it runs when properties change in a component which is similar to component did update. So here there is a trick equation it is. So go to the code base. Here as you can see, here we are going to use this state called name. So whenever the name change, whenever we type the name inside the input tag change, this piece of code runs, and this piece of this useEffect depends on the name. So I just put it in a dependency array. So go to it and check it. So you can see the name change to appear here. So again I refresh it. So the name changed to. So I just type it here. You can see the page change. Patel Pradyuman. So page re-render every time and the name changed to it. Okay, this is the third use, and which is similar to the component date update, which is similar to the component date update. You can use any dependencies as you want. Suppose there is something, there is another variable, another state variable named age, and you just provide it here age, and the initial value is 0, and save it. And now if you just type it here as age, you must provide this age as a dependency here. This is the important one. So suppose if you use any variable inside the useEffect hook, suppose any variable, any number of variable, you must provide the name in these dependency arrays. So whenever that state variable change, this piece of code runs again and again and again. So this is the main motto of the third use of the useEffect. So whenever I change it again, so as you can see, every time the change, it re-render again and again. So this is the third use of useEffect hook. And now the last but not the least, and the most important one and most difficult one to understand is the fourth use of useEffect hook. So to replace component will unmount with useEffect, you have to use a cleanup function in it, which will run first and then component unmount. So this is the syntax, the useEffect, the function, and the return function, and this is the cleanup function. Okay, so you may need to understand it. So first of all, we have to uncomment this and save it. Now just uncomment it and save it. So you want to use this useEffect and then the console.log, and this is the cleanup function. So this is the return, and there just type cleanup function, and then I just type console.log component unmounting, and we have to run this code when component unmount. So I just type I run after unmounting. Okay, so just go again and check these things. So refresh this, and you can see page re-render. I render initially and I run after mounting. So this piece of code runs initially at every time, but this is not gonna be done on every re-render. So again I just type, you can see it's run, but when component unmounting first, page re-render, and then the piece of code run, this piece of code runs. So first this cleanup functions run, then the page re-render it, every render functions run, and then after the piece of code, this piece of code runs every time. So first in unmounting component, the first cleanup function run, and then this piece of code which is above the cleanup functions run. So this is the very tricky thing to understand, but it is very important to learn, and this thing is similar to the component will unmount. If you had some problem to understand this thing, I will recommend you to just go to the React docs and then main concept and the state and life cycle. Understand the state and life cycles. You have to read these things, then you will understand the every life cycles, the state, use effect hook, everything. Okay, so I will recommend you to learn these things after watching any videos, not my, after watching any videos regarding the components and prop, regarding handling events, anything. So I will recommend you to look these docs after watching any type of project or any type of video. So that's it guys. If you like my video, please subscribe, like and share with your friends also. Thanks for watching guys.